Hello, I'm Meg Salyer, and I'd like to welcome you to the Ward 6 Council program. We have a really big treat today, and I want to begin by thanking Rick Cain, who's been our director of our Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority. I've been there for 23 and a half years, Rick.
That's right.
And today we pulled you out of your first day of retirement, so it probably doesn't feel that good that you're back in City Hall, but
It's been a great home for me. So
thank you so much for taking the time to come be with us today. And I'd really, first of all, personally, we've had the chance to work together for almost 6 years, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate the dedication and the hard work and the compassion with which you work with a population of folks that are dependent on our transit system that hasn't been perfect for the 6 years I've been here. I know we're working hard, but we've had some challenges, and you've done just a beautiful job. Your management style and your engagement with your board and your engagement with the council has all been so important, and I really want to thank you for that before we begin. It's very special. But today is a new day, and so let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about sort of looking back, what you see as your major accomplishments over these 23 years and where we're going.
You know, that's, as you get near retirement, you start thinking about those things, and I think probably the thing that I believe will have the most lasting impact on the city is when we did the fixed guideway study back in 2005, because that has really set kind of a roadmap for where we're headed. I mean, I think now of all the things that are underway, we're talking about the corridor study, talking about developing connections with Edmond and Norman and Midwest City, Tinker Air Force Base, and that's being coordinated by the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments. Last week we just opened up the Santa Fe station as our new intermodal hub, and we had a celebration event on that. Again, something that was part of the fixed guideway study, and it identified the need to find a central point where all of our transportation technologies could come together. And so we're now just getting started on that whole activity. And
talk a little bit, if you don't mind. I'm going to just step back because our viewers may not know what a fixed guideway study is or means.
Sure.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
It was a long-term look. We actually, again, keep in mind this was 2004, 2005 when we were doing it. We looked out to the year 2030 and we said, where are the transportation corridors going to be? And in a sense, what we're saying is, where's housing going to be? Where's employment going to be? Where are the entertainment centers going to be? And look at those as demand generators for transportation needs. And so then we identified those specific corridors, and then we said, okay, what's the best way to address that so we can offer opportunities to citizens other than that single occupant vehicle?
Right.
And going through that study, then we identified 11 corridors, and interestingly enough, one of those corridors was the downtown corridor, which now leads into the streetcar, that part of the MAPS program, and looking at how that can be not only a connector for downtown, but actually something that kind of sets the tone as we grow out and we start reaching out to other areas of the city with our transportation.
And so as we're talking about transportation, I mean, one of the things I've learned over the course of the last few years is when you use the word transit, it means a lot of different things to almost everybody you talk to. And some people see that as bus, some people see that as automobiles, some people see that as train. So in our fixed guideway study, you looked at all the different alternatives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
rapid bus transit might be one of those?
That's right. That's another technology that's been introduced over the last several years into the marketplace. And even when we talk about rail transit, I think to some people they envision big trains and what we might call commuter rail, and others see that Dallas or that Denver, that Houston light rail type of a vehicle. And again, we're working on streetcars right now.
Which is even a different version.
Absolutely.
So you sort of, I think, we've got a streetcar system. We then potentially could have an experience with light rail that would be longer but still short distances with lots of stops.
Right.
And then you load onto that, layer on commuter
rail. You get into commuter rail that are longer distances and fewer stops. And then again, I talked about the intermodal hub, and we can't forget Amtrak that runs between here and Fort Worth, and we're hoping to grow that system as well. But I think what came out of the other key point that came out of the fixed guideway study was the fact that when you talk about all these other transportation options, the core is still going to be that rubber tire bus.
Right.
That when people get off that train, they're probably not at the end of their destination, and they need that bus connection. And so with that, we just recently completed a major study. It's really the first study we've done in the last 30 years to just revamp our entire system, to try to make it more easily understood, make it more reliable for the citizens who use it, and provide more transportation options for those who have choices. Not almost 90% or over 90% of our bus users right now are what we call transit dependent. They don't have any other choices. And we certainly want to service their need, but we'd also like to encourage choice riders to try out public transportation, and I think this new system will help us get there.
Right, so some of our challenges have been routes were a little confusing, another technical term, but headways, it took a long time to get from point A to point Z. They weren't always reliable, and so along with COPTA, the City Council approved a study, and I think we hired Nelson Nygaard as our consultants. I was so impressed. So talk a little bit about how they put this program together, because they didn't wave a magic wand. They went to every stop. They counted people.
That's right. Yeah, it's that they wrote our system. They got intimately involved in our system and understood by following our buses, by doing interviews with users of the system, what are the pluses and the minuses. Of course, these were experienced individuals that had done this at other cities as well, and so they knew what to look for. And some of those things, and you mentioned it, you're right on. They told us that we need to make our lines a little straighter, a little less curvy and easier to understand. So we're not going to go as deep into some of the neighborhoods as we did previously, which means some of the riders may need to walk an extra block or two to get to the system. But by staying on those main streets will help us to be able to move faster. Faster means we're more reliable, we're able to maintain our schedules, and you mentioned headways, that frequency in between when that bus comes and when that next bus is coming. We've been able to make giant strides there, and really City Council gets the pat on the back for this, because they have invested, they've identified public transportation as one of the priority items. They've invested money into the system to help give us the ability to increase our frequency on our routes. We've been able to move from, many of our routes had an hour between buses. Now, with rare exception, we're down to 30 minutes between buses, and in some parts of the city we'll even have 15-minute service.
And that makes all the difference in the world. If you need to get to work, and if you've just missed one, another bus is going to come along with 15 minutes or even 30 minutes, at least
Right.
And so you've got some certainty, and that is an issue with public transit to be certain.
Absolutely. And again, if you're going to get choice riders, they don't want to wait an hour, but they want to know that frequency. And that's another step that we've actually introduced in our system, and we'll be bringing it to the public here very shortly. We've been running tests right now to make sure it's working properly, but real-time information so that you'll know when is that next bus coming. And so whether you're at the downtown transit center or you're going to be at one of our bus stops somewhere throughout the city, or whether you've got a little handheld device that you can find out and get on the internet, it'll be able to tell you that next bus is coming by in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And that takes all the question away, and that's one of the biggest challenges we have, is that people are never sure, how much longer do I have to wait for that bus? And so we hope that this will be a real benefit to our riders, and we believe it will be.
Well, we have some real empirical evidence that as we've added some dollars to routes and made them more frequent and more reliable, the ridership went up by 30% or so.
Absolutely.
I mean, you had great results with doing that. So I have all the confidence in the world that we'll be able to see that kind of change begin to happen system-wide. And,
you're right.
Yeah, extremely important. And what I really appreciated about the study was they worked with us within our existing city budget, which it's easy to design a good system if you do it without regard to dollars.
Right.
But transit is a big chunk of our budget. And so, I think what they were able to offer was, here's what you can do within your existing budget. Here are some of the enhancements that you can make if you've got some extra dollars. And I know the council's working with the authority to try to come up with some of those extra dollars. And then in a best case scenario, here are some other things. And, what I really like, Rick, and I think there's been this giant paradigm shift in Oklahoma City that as we're talking about transit, we're all talking about walking. We're talking about walkability and connectivity and all of the things that make a total system work. I'm thinking about the intermodal hub, and we hope we'll be able to bring Greyhound buses back at
That's
some
correct.
point to downtown and use that as a connector. So if somebody comes from out of state, they stop at the intermodal hub, they can get on the streetcar, get over to the bus transit station, and then go on to where they need to. I mean, I think people are really beginning to understand how important a full-blown transit system is to a modern city that Oklahoma City is really becoming.
And I don't want to forget bikes.
Right.
Several years ago we introduced bike racks on our buses, and now if you watch any of our buses go up and down the street, almost invariably you'll see at least one, if not two, bikes hanging off the front of the bus, because it's just really taken off. And with the emphasis that the city's put on developing more trails, bike trails, and trying to connect all parts of the city, it's been a real compliment, and I'm glad that the bus operation could be part of encouraging that bike traffic.
I hope they're not our Spokies. Those are supposed to go from station to station.
That's right.
So if I see a Spokie on one of our buses, I'm going to be kind of concerned about where it might be going. We have just a couple minutes, but give me maybe a quick wrap up of a 23-year career and share your hopes or aspirations for what we see in the future for Oklahoma City.
I think back when I started, transit wasn't even an afterthought. I don't think public transportation was really being discussed at all. And over the course of the years, and of course a lot of it played in really coming from the fixed guideway, and then the impetus that council has given it by identifying it as a priority, and as you said, giving us a little extra money to make some incremental improvements to our system. And now you see lots of people talking about it, and I don't want to forget the fact that we've got a regional transit dialogue discussion going on right now to talk about how do we not only improve transportation in Oklahoma City, but the entire metropolitan region. And community leaders are coming to the table and discussing this, recognizing you can't just grow the system on the back of Oklahoma City. Everybody needs to be a partner.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I really do get so excited when I think about that as well. We talk a lot about regionalism. It's kind of hard to figure out what component might be the first one, but transit makes perfect sense. We can't do it without a funding source, and there's lots of conversation about how we might do that, but a regional transit authority really would begin to help take us through. So I hope our viewers can see how much incredible knowledge you bring to the table here. And I want to encourage them that we're not going to completely let you go. I'm very hopeful, and I know the city manager is, that we'll be able to continue to use this great institutional knowledge and your wisdom to help us as we chart the path forward for transit in the region. So,
Absolutely.
Rick, thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
everything you've done for the city.
Thanks
so much.